Hey all, and welcome back to Fuzzy Dirtsy Gaming and the third episode of Zero to Hero. Now this may be the last one in its entirety, or maybe just for a few weeks, as I'm going away for 10 days for a well-earned break in the sun, so I'm going to be off the game. Now I've spent a lot of time testing things and tweaking the character in various ways, along with trying out some different farming strategies. The two main topics I'll cover off in this video are the upgrades that I made and the changes to the build, along with the farming strategies that I use to earn currency. The character is now good enough for me in softcore. I'm not someone who min-maxes. I'm not someone who needs their character to be able to stand in every attack going or do 1 billion DPS. So other than upgrading the sword and maybe getting a double mod Watcher's Eye, the build for me is done. I farmed T17s with very few deaths. I've completed some Wave 15 simulacrums. And I finally finished all my favourite slots by completing the Feared. Now I wasn't really waiting to be strong to do this encounter. I just find things like Uber Zeri, Chola, Shaper, Elder, Uber Elder, all those things super boring, so I needed to force myself to finish that. I've also not finished all the unique maps, as again there's a couple I just can't bring myself to do again because they bore me to tears, so I'm missing a few Atlas points. I will go through the gear and the skill links. If you are following, please don't try and craft identical gear, as to get the exact mods I've got will be tens of divines. What I will do is go through the mods that I was looking for and generally what you want on all of your gear combined rather than specific individual pieces. So let's start with the farming strategies I use to earn some currency. So let's go through my T17 Atlas tree and strategy first. Now this is a very mellow T17 strategy. This isn't going to make you 20 or 30 divines per hour, and if you're someone that can handle any content, there's lots of videos on YouTube on how to farm an absolute ton of 8-mod maps in T17s, but this is kind of my semi-attempt at doing it because I'm not someone who runs T17s that much, so I wanted to ease myself into it. I didn't want to put myself off by dying a ton. So what we're going for here is all the map drop nodes. We're going for a Nico bonus because he gives you a really good boost to defense, attack speed and speed. We're going for Exile altars, including the extra pack size. We're going for most of the good scarab nodes on the tree, and then shrines to give me a little bit of a helping hand clearing the map and killing the boss. So the scarabs that I went for are one cartography scarab of corruption, because that's what makes your maps drop as 8 mod. Gone for a domination scarab to get some shrines. Cartography scarab of escalation to again get some more maps to drop. Monstrous lineage to get bigger pack size for magic monsters. And then a Nico scarab to make sure that we get the soul fight in the map so that we can get the Nico bonus. And then on the map device, I'm going domination. It's probably overkill, but the more shrines, the better, because the more help I get clearing the map. And really, this is just a strategy set up to get some corrupted 8-mod maps that either sell or using a strategy later on, drop a load of scarabs, and then obviously get the fragments from killing the boss. I don't want to juice it to the extreme because I want to kill the boss to get the loot at the end. And if I make it too difficult, it might be that my character can't cope with the boss at the very end. So we've gone for a fairly conservative T17 strategy, but it easily may be 10 plus divines per hour if I was to sell the 8-mod maps, but I haven't done. I've kept them because I'm going to want to run them for another strategy, either on this character or a different character. The only change I would make, which I forgot to do, was you would definitely put singular focus on this tree because you can't drop T17s in T17s. The idea of this strategy is to drop T16 maps 8 mod, so you obviously are really only interested in dropping your favorite map. It's up to you whether you do it. You will drop less maps, but are junk 8-mod maps that sellable? I don't know, but I would personally put on singular focus, but it's optional. The only other thing to note is I didn't buy T17 maps. Rather than selling them, I just ran them using this Atlas tree. So it's something that I went to once I had a bunch saved up and I wanted to go and farm some currency and some fragments, but I didn't go and purchase maps because I don't think that's probably that profitable. But because I sometimes can't be bothered to sell maps because you can't sell them on the exchange, this is my way of recycling them and turning them into currency. Now, I did do some destructive play, but I only did it for a little while. I'm not sure my tree was the best, so I'm not going to put the tree or any scarabs in the video. But it was essentially destructive play with maps, scarabs, and then when you drop your guardian maps, you run those, then you do the invitation, you sell your maven writs, because fragments for both the Elder Guardians and the Conquerors sell really, really well. But I'm not sure I had the strategy very well optimized, so it's not something I'm going to go through. The main area where I got my money was this strategy here, which is just pure delirium. I was making between 9 to 13 divines per 20 maps, and the maps take about 2 to 2.5 minutes to run, and that was consistent. The profit on this has been amazing. It's scarab-wise, 4 scarabs of paranoia, which essentially add 2 layers of reward for each one. So with 4 scarabs, it's 8 layers of rewards. I was paying between 4.5 to 5 chaos for these scarabs. Even if there was 6 chaos, they'd still be well worth it. 1 Deli Scarab of Mania, these are dirt cheap. This essentially just makes your rewards go 100% quicker. And then obviously the map filled in the 6th slot. And then the map device, you don't do anything, you just do your free quantity bonus. So overall, these maps are about 25 chaos each. And I think on average, I drop 4 to 5 delirium orbs per map, and they sell for 9 to 10 chaos. Then you get other things like raw currency, you get stack decks, you get an absolute ton of loot that's really easy to sell on the exchange. I'll show some highlights as I talk through the strategy once you've kind of had a look at the tree. But again, I've just highlighted the areas of the tree that I focus on. So again, it was maps just because the more Tevens... Again, it was maps because the more Tevens... Fucking hell. Again, I've gone maps because T17 maps are big profit. Or, like I said, I was using them myself to farm on a different strategy. We're taking delirium nodes along with getting a 100% chance to get delirium and slowing the fog, because it makes it easier to get to the boss before the fog runs out. Again, we're just taking loads of scarab nodes on the tree because scarabs are big money. And then shrines. These are probably optional, but when you get speed shrine, it just helps you get around the map pretty quick. So instead of a 2.5 minute clear, it might be 1 minute 45. So this actually does add quite a bit of profit in the long run. Essentially for these maps, you want to pick a map where the boss is very easy to get to from different positions. So I run City Square for this because the boss is always in the middle. Essentially, I'll just go around killing monsters until I get to 6 layers of rewards. I'll then go and kill the boss. That'll give me 7 and I'll just end the delirium. I don't need to hang around in the map because even though we are going Exile, we're not taking any of the extra altar nodes. So it's very unlikely we're going to get very much at all. If I see a free quantity and rarity altar, I will click it. But other than that, my goal for these maps is just to get in and out within 2.5 minutes. And as I say, in 20 maps, I was making easily 10 divines profit, even once we take away the fairly substantial cost of the scarabs. I did say I wouldn't go to delirium, but it is a mechanic I really, really enjoy because what I like to do when I play this game is just blast. I like to get in and out of maps as quickly as possible. I'm not a massive fan of having like 10-minute maps with loads of mechanics in it. I like them to be not difficult, but not easy. And I just want to get through the map in as quick a time as possible and just keep turning over the currency. I'm also a massive fan of the exchange, so I'd rather sell on that than on trade. And then this is obviously going to get me enough gold to do so. Again, I'll link the tree in the video description, but I have got a video going over this strategy in a bit more detail. And obviously, I've already showed you the tree and highlighted the areas that you want to concentrate on. So overall, I would say I made probably 40 to 50 divines, just mapping very, very casually. And it was a lot of fun. I've made all the upgrades I think I want to make to the build. Realistically, from here, maybe a Mage Blood if I wanted to farm that sort of currency. A double Watcher's Eye with something like Precision and reduced damage from Determination, or max resistances with Purity of Elements. And then getting that sword with the Fortify Implicit, because that is going to be a big damage increase. And so with that tree out of the way, let's go over my character. And I'll just explain what you want to look for on the gear rather than this is what you want on each individual item. Because if you did it that way, it's going to cost you an absolute fortune. Let's go over the tree and the jewels first, because there's been a few changes in gear since the last video. And without going through the tree first, it's not going to make a lot of sense. So the first thing to note is I've added in a second cluster jewel. It's exactly the same cluster jewel as the first. So I've got 2 that are Feed the Fury, Martial Prowess, and Drive the Destruction, but we don't take the back node. And then the same up here. All my rare jewels, I'm just trying to get as much crit multi as possible. So in here, we've got crit multi with 200 melee weapons, lightning damage, crit multi, and crit multi. This one here is more to get some reservation efficiency and some resistances, and then some attack speed. You may not need a jewel like this if your resistances and your mana are fine. The one in this medium one here is again crit multi with elemental skills, melee crit multi and life. The shield node does nothing. And then we've just got a medium cluster of pressure points and basics of pain. In this large cluster, we've got the Forbidden Flame jewel for Overwhelm, and then obviously the matching Forbidden Flesh. That is because I didn't want to run the amulet anymore just to get my charges. So because we anoint Overwhelm, it means I can go back to Masterful Form. So we have Bane of Legends, Headsman, Brutal Fervor, Masterful Form, and Overwhelm. I think the jewels combined were 6 divines. I think one was 2 and one was 4. And then we have a Watcher's Eye here with increased damage while affected by Precision. We've dropped all of this area of the tree here and the mana reservation nodes here just because I've ended up putting Precision on my life, and it just means I can drop all of these nodes. So Thank you very much. I can't remember who it was, but someone recommended I do that in the last video, and it saved me quite a lot of points. Rest of the tree don't really need to go through. I've added in these two-handed nodes here just to get some more crit multi and then some more damage against unique enemies. But nothing else has changed. It's a lethal pride with double damage and intimidate. And then a pretty bog standard tree for this type of build. So we'll go on to the gear. So as I said, don't try and replicate this gear because I got very lucky rolling this gear. And to try and get similar, especially on the rings, it's going to cost you an absolute fortune for marginal gains. Essentially, all you're looking for on your rare gear for the most part is to get your resistances and attributes sorted out and get as much life as you can. Hopefully leaving prefixes on jewelry for minus mana cost to make your mana much more manageable. The only stats I think you realistically need on gear is you want attack speed on your gloves along with the craft for damage while leeching. You want intelligence on a ring. Doesn't have to be on both, doesn't matter which one it is, but you are going to struggle with intelligence. And then I also recommend you get intelligence on your helmet. Apart from that, it's just a case of getting life and resistances to basically get capped, make sure your attributes are fine. If you are struggling with either resistances or attributes, that's where you'd use the ample amount of rare jewels that you can put into the build to get those aspects of the build fixed. And then maybe once you've got better gear, you can then change them jewels to some crit multi-jewels. Let's start with the rings. As I say, don't copy what I've done. I was very, very lucky getting these rings. Essentially what I did with this one was bought an intelligence fracture base and just spammed chaos in harvest until I got decent life and hoped to get a suffix or a prefix that was good, and ended up getting lucky and rolled big LE damage with attacks. The same thing essentially happened on this ring. This time I bought fractured life and I used essences of torment to get lightning damage. Again, just looking for something half decent. I didn't have anything in mind. I just wanted to get resistances into the build. And I ended up getting lucky and rolling LE damage with attack skills. So you don't need all of these stats. You just want for your rings, one amethyst ring where you can get a ton of chaos and life, and then one ring to sort the rest of your resistances out, maybe some intelligence on one of these, and then as much non-challenge skills as you can get. Now, the amulet I've dropped, I was running Replica Badge of the Brotherhood before to get some endurance charges, but when I looked at it, I was basically running that amulet for 3 endurance charges and it didn't seem worth it. So that's why I went out and purchased the Forbidden Jewels. For this amulet, I bought a crit multi-fracture and then I rolled it with essences of torment for lightning damage. I wasn't aiming for crit strike chance and it doesn't do a ton. I was basically just looking for a good suffix and life. That's it. I didn't need anything in particular. If I hit like a resistance that I didn't need, I could roll it using harvest into one that I did need. The key stats on this are crit multi, lightning damage, life, and then a prefix for non-channeling skills. And again, I've anointed sovereignty because I need it to fit all my mana together. The helmet has not changed. This is intelligence, life, resistances. That's it. You want reduced mana cost of attacks and mana reservation efficiency of skills. The body armor, this can be whatever you like. The suppression I rolled out of luck, but we take lucky suppress anyway, so this doesn't do a huge amount. Essentially, you just want tons of armor and evasion and resistances. For the implicits, I've gone for fizz damage taken as lightning and increased effect to non-cursoras, but there's a few different implicits you could roll here. The gloves, I spent an absolute fortune on because I wanted +2 strike. I ended up getting +1 all the way up to the 4th level, which is the one before it hits 2. And then it went all the way back down and actually rolled off of the glove, so I had to then roll it again. I think these gloves cost me about 14 divines to craft, which is ludicrous. Essentially, you want +2 additional strike, suppress spell damage, attack speed, life, and then damage while leeching. I recommend you also look for strength on these. It makes the gloves a bit more expensive, but you may not pick up enough strength on your lethal pride. So it might be you go for strength on a ring instead, but you're going to need strength somewhere in the build. And then outside of that, everything is uniques. We've got our perseverance, Ralakesh's impatience, and then Rakiata's dance. And that brings the build together quite nicely. I have this tendency to always build characters with rare items that probably aren't needed. You could just as easily run the Taming, and then for your amulet, you can run Yoke of Suffering. If you can balance all your attributes and life and everything else, these 2 items are going to give you a ton of damage. In terms of flasks, we've got Quicksilver, we've got a Diamond Flask, we have a Granite Flask, and then a Tincture with basically crit chance and attack speed. The suffixes I went for on flasks are Armor, Critical Strike Chance, and Evasion. I couldn't fit in a Jade Flask because I needed a Diamond Flask, so that's why I've made sure I've got Evasion on my suffixes. So it makes more sense to drop the Jade Flask over something like the Granite Flask. But if you do decide to copy the build, just use this as a template and then aim to get your life, resistances, attributes, and a bit of attack speed. You don't need anything fancy. Yes, having Ellie damage on these 2 rings is very, very nice, but it was super lucky and it's not worth the cost to roll it. So we've got our Vile Smite. I've now got 2020. That's linked to Volatility, Fortify, Multi-Strike, Trinity, and increased crit damage support. The reason I've kept Fortify in is I just cannot find another way to get Fortification in the build. I rolled the mod on the armor so that your melee hits have a chance to fortify, but the problem with Smite is the majority of the enemies will get killed by the lightning AoE, and I maybe had Fortify up for 25% of a map that I tested it on, so it will work on bosses, but mapping, because we rely on Fortify to get Onslaught, it just felt really bad at mapping. So at the moment, until I can get a sword with a Fortify implicit, I'm stuck with it in my gem links. In Helmet, we've got Arrogance linked to Precision. As I mentioned, I've moved Precision onto my life because it allowed me to drop a lot of nodes on the tree. We've got Faster Attacks linked to Leap Slam as our movement skill, and then we've got like a Flame Dash for Grasping Vines. We have Automation, More Duration, and Molten Shell. We then have Blood Rage, and then we've got a 3-link of Mark on Hit, Life Tap, and Assassin's Mark. And then in the sword at the moment, I've got my auras, which is Purity of Elements, Grace, Determination, and then a level 3 Enlighten. So overall, I've spent an absolute ton of currency on this build, but a lot of it was figuring out trial and error, things that you won't have to do if you just decide you want to run this build. You can just go for the build as it is and just make sure you get your stats, your resistances, and your life in order, but don't try and mirror the build item for item. As mentioned, in terms of content, the build's done everything that I want it to do. I've not attempted Ubers because I just don't Uber boss, so I don't see the point of making the boss Uber boss viable, when if you wanted to Uber boss, you could build a much cheaper character that can trivialize that content. It's done simulacrums, but I don't think it's a mechanic that this build excels at. Because it's a crit build, I just found that every single round had reduced damage to crit and extra life, and it just made them feel quite bad. One thing this build is missing that I think is very important in Simulacrum is stun immunity. I had 2 deaths in Simulacrums, they were both from just getting stunned. I think if I had stun immunity, then it makes the build okay for Simulacrums, but I think it's not content you really want to be doing. I personally find them really, really boring. If you did want to build that can just mindlessly do Simulacrums, this isn't the one, but the build really does excel at mapping. It's done really well in A-mod maps, it's done well in T17 maps. It gets around very simple either Alkengel or early Scarab maps as well, and can earn a ton of currency because it is very, very quick, and Vile Smite does clear screens. And then the only other thing to cover off is this was a build purely done for enjoyment because I like Smite. When you compare Smite to Lightning Strike, there's no comparison. Lightning Strike is a way better skill in terms of damage. The Vile skill is better because it actually gives you a ton of single target. Clear on Vile Lightning Strike, you can get just as good as something like Smite, or actually better because your projectiles go further. But I enjoy playing Smite, and anyone who follows my channel know I played Lightning Strike even before it was popular. I've played Lightning Strike since 3.13, so even though I have played it this league, it isn't a build I wanted to invest heavily into. Smite, I'm really loving. Yes, it's definitely pales in comparison to something like Lightning Strike, but it's good enough. Yes, it's going to cost you more money, but what else are you going to spend that currency on? And that's kind of it for the video. I've really enjoyed taking a character from scratch all the way through. Not used Rakiata's dance before, really enjoyed it. So I think once I'm back from a break, we'll start another Zero to Hero. It's probably still going to be some sort of attack skill because they're the only builds that I enjoy playing. But I think we'll try something on Warden because I've not really dived into it yet. Thank you very much for watching. All of the POBs, Atlas trees, description of strategies will be in the video description. Hope everyone has a good day. Take care and see you in the next one.